So imagine this. You are obsessed with training. You have everything dialed in. You spend 3 months, 6 months, a year training as hard as you can, developing yourself in as much knowledge as possible. But yet you look back on a full year and realize you haven't made any progress. Imagine wasting a full year of training. This is the exact same position I was in. This video is going to be about what I would tell myself to avoid back in those days so that I wouldn't lose out on a full year of progress. And the answer to that, my friends, is bulking. Bulking is the best way to build muscle. There's no way around it. We have countless studies now showing that a calorie surplus outperforms maintenance and a deficit in just about every situation. So this whole Maingaining thing that was popularized by Greg Doucette, who was oddly enough one of the first fitness influencers I followed when I started my journey. So I was really afraid of putting on body fat. It kept me locked in this cycle of, man, I trained, I feel tired, I worked hard, but I wasn't giving my body the necessary energy to put on the size. So muscle building is a very energy intensive process. It requires a significant amount of calories to build contractile tissue, right? And also it takes a good amount of calories to fuel sufficiently intense training to cause that increase in muscle growth, to cause that muscle growth stimulus. So it's a double whammy there. You need more energy on board if you want to put on size. You simply must put on weight if you want to gain. Looking back on it now, it seems so simple. So the whole Maingaining approach is just stupid, in my opinion. It may have utility later on in life when you were trying to squeeze out like very last little bit of your gains, and so it doesn't make sense to really push a surplus that hard. But if you're young and you're new to the gym, you need to bulk, and you need to bulk now. So let's go over how we can bulk. In my opinion, there are three categories of lifters here. Number one being the newbies. That's kind of where I started. I was 120 pounds and 6'2", so for reference, I was pretty real thin. So as a newbie, I'm assuming you haven't really spent much time tracking your nutrition, and I think this is a must. At the end of the day, you are not making progress because you're not aware of how much energy you're taking in. So the first thing we can do is highlighting and creating an awareness around what our intake looks like. So I started tracking around 6 months into my lifting journey. And that might actually be late compared to some of y'all. Some people start right from the get-go, but I got on the train late. And this video isn't going to detail exactly how to track your calories. The way I did it was I weighed food. I used MyFitnessPal to log my calories. If you want a more in-depth tutorial on that, you can find some online or leave a comment down below, and I'll make a whole video dedicated just about how you can track your calories and utilize some of these online apps to make it easier for yourself. But that's outside of the scope of this video. So the goal of tracking is to find your maintenance calories. And the process of doing that is finding your calorie intake over a given week while your weight's stable. So let's say over the past month, if your weight hasn't changed, all you do is you track the amount of food, the amount of calories that you're eating over that week, average it out so you get an average daily intake, and then boom, there's your maintenance calories right there. From there, increase it by anywhere from 200 to 500 calories. If you're really new and really small, you can even push that harder. I've heard anecdotes of some guys pushing 1,000, 1,500 calorie surpluses and still seeing great progress because they started off on the underweight side. They were so small that their body was basically starving, just soaking up all of that nutrients. And they were also training very hard at that period of time. So if you are truly new and you're very small, you can push a relatively hard surplus, and I would recommend that. I would recommend doing that for a long ass time, ideally for a couple of years if you're young and small. Some people, I know some guys who have been bulking for about 3.5 years, 4 years, 5 years occasionally. If you are new and small, I wouldn't even think about cutting for basically forever. I mean, 2 years out feels like forever from now. So I would just focus on eating and training hard. It's not entirely just about calories. Macronutrients are important too. The biggest one being protein, right? So the amino acids are what we build our muscle off of. Just because you have the energy to build muscle, if you don't have the actual building blocks, you're not going to get anywhere. So aim for about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight is a good general heuristic. Realistically, you probably only need 0.8 grams per pound or 1.6 grams per kilogram to maximize your results. But 1 gram per pound is really easy for us Americans. If you're European, what is that? 2.2 grams per kilogram. So it's just easier that way. 1 is a lot simpler to keep track of than 0.8. Now, don't think that calorie increase at the beginning is the end. Your weight will plateau. As you gain body weight, your maintenance calories go up. Also, through other factors such as your NEAT, or known as non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and just the adaptive ability of the metabolism, you are going to burn more calories as you eat more calories. The most crucial step here is not falling for ab anxiety. I remember 6 months in, I would spend a couple days eating like 4,500 calories and really crushing it. And then 3 days later, I was feeling bloated. I was watery, right? I lost a little bit of definition. I no longer have 12 forearm veins, something like that. And I thought that was it. I was like, man, I'm fat. Especially hearing Greg Doucette, if you don't have abs, you're fat. Guys, don't fall for the ab anxiety. Push the food, push the training. Your progress will thank you later. I promise you. If you want to stay small, that's fine. Some people just like to lift. But in reality, when you look at it, if you really want to grow muscle, which is what a lot of people are in the business of the gym for, you have to put on size. You have to put on weight. Now, the second category is maybe you stumbled upon this video and you're on the older side and you're just getting into lifting, or you've been lifting for a while, but you're getting towards the end of squeezing out your gains. This is where you can be more conservative with your surplus, and it makes sense. Because as you get older, your health blood markers start to be a little more responsive to your diet and how much body fat you're putting on. So it just makes sense to go ahead and be more conservative, especially if you're advanced in your training and you're not in a position to put on substantial amounts of muscle unless you're going on anabolic steroids, which I think is a very stupid idea in someone's lifting journey. And I'll go ahead and link a video up there about that I have previously on this channel. I would focus more on progression in the gym and performance metrics rather than pushing body weight. I think progression in the gym is a very good reflection as you get kind of later on in your lifting journey of how well your training and progress is going. Obviously, progression means progress, right? So we're going to focus on that instead of purely pushing body weight up. So people in this situation, your gains will be slow and hard to measure, especially visually. So you're going to have to trust the training process. And then it might be valuable to use some metrics like actual circumference measurements of your arms, of your thighs, of your waist to go ahead and validate that you're not letting yourself go and you're not going overboard with your surplus. The third category lifter here is someone getting into this and let's say you are overweight or you feel like you're overweight. This is where a small calorie deficit or maintenance may actually make sense. If you're new to the gym and you have a good amount of body fat, but you've never really spent time training, I really wouldn't worry about cutting. I still actually wouldn't pursue a calorie deficit unless your weight has gotten really out of hand and a doctor is advising you to lose weight for health reasons. Besides that, you still want to be in a position to where you can feel your training properly. And if you provide enough of a growth stimulus, then you can actually recomp. And it's fairly common in a lot of literature, especially if you have a lot of body fat on board, the energy is there. You have the energy to liberate, to build that muscle mass already on hand. So what you have to do is just train, right? Just provide that stimulus and you should get a pretty robust recomp effect for a long time. So let's say once you're in a healthy body fat range, I would say the cutoff for healthy for men is about 20%. And a lot of that's subjective. It's hard to estimate. I would personally use waist circumference as a good metric. So below 40 inches for men and below 35 inches for women is a pretty good metric. Once you're in a healthy body fat range, then you can bulk. It's the most efficient way. And if you're new and you spent your first few years kind of getting into a more favorable body composition, the bulk is still untapped potential. Like you still have a lot of gains to make. One caution though is that you may want to take this slow if you know you have a high propensity to put on body fat, or let's say you have a very strong reward sensation when it comes to food. So some people really enjoy food, and you'll notice some people can just like forget eating for a day. Like I can't understand that personally. But if you really enjoy food and you're like, oh yeah, finally, dude, I get to bulk, I get to just bloat max, I get to blow up, right? Then I don't know, you can kind of overshoot your goals there. And so I would still be a little cautious if you know that you're prone to weight gain. But if you really get yourself in the right mindset, you can make a lot of great progress bulking after you've been a heavier individual. So here's some common questions and complaints that I see kind of thrown around the internet about bulking. We're going to address those now. And if you have any more, drop them in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I just want to help you guys out. Number one being, but bro, I'm so full. How do I eat more? Look, dude, if you want to grow, you just got to eat. Like, there's plenty of ways around it, right? You can prioritize calorie-dense foods. So, like nut butters, super calorie dense and also nutritious. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like a Big Mac and fries blended up with a strawberry shake and then chug that straight to the dome. Like, no, we can still prioritize our micronutrients and our health while also getting in a substantial amount of calories. Another quick tip is to start eating as early as possible. I know guys who wake up and don't eat till like 1 p.m. Bro, I'm sorry. If you have to eat 4,000 calories a day and you're not starting till 1 p.m. and you're already someone who has very little appetite, you're screwed. Like, it's game over. You're not gonna olive oil your way to your 4,000 calorie diet. It's not sustainable. It's just not gonna happen. So start eating as soon as possible in the day so you expand your eating window and allow your appetite to gradually come and fluctuate back up throughout the day instead of having to stuff all of your food in one condensed time period, because then you're really full, it's uncomfortable, and no one's going to do that for months and months on end, which is what this process is going to take. It's not going to be a fast process. You're going to have to commit to it. So we want to make it as sustainable and as practical as possible. I mentioned the Big Mac shake. If those two strategies don't work and you really are struggling, I would find good shake ideas online. I'll drop like a link below of some really good mass gainer shake ideas, and the actual mass gainer powders are pretty popular. There's a bunch of ways that you can fit 1,000, 2,000 calories in just a blender bottle. You'll be surprised what some of the recipes have come up with out there. And they taste really good, so they're easy to get down in most cases. Again, we kind of alluded to this earlier, but don't lose sight of diet quality. Some people really do just have to eat some pretty crappy food sources to get the calories in. So I would always go by the general heuristic of the 80-20 rule. I'm sure you've seen it online if you've been digging into nutrition. But basically saying 80% of your diet is coming from whole or minimally processed foods that you know are nutritious. And then the other 20% can be more enjoyment foods or foods that just make it easier for you to get calories in. Second question here is, but do I need to track my calories? Why can't I just eyeball stuff, bro? Well, eyeballing stuff was the thing that wasn't gaining you weight before. So we're going to have some metric to make sure that we're increasing our energy intake over time and that we're sufficiently fueling the necessary process that we need to continue bulking. So technically, no. No, you don't. If you look at the average Americans don't track, and they've mastered the act of putting on weight, right? So you can just go and eat and put on weight. That's possible. But if you're watching this video and you're struggling with bulking, that's not you. If you eat the same foods every day, like me personally, I enjoy what I eat and I pretty much eat the same diet every day. So I haven't tracked in, I don't know, 6 months, a year. And that's because I eat the same thing every day, and I already was tracking what that diet, what that calorie intake, what that protein intake was before. And so now I'm in a position to where I can titrate up here and there. I still measure and weigh, but now I just have to add like 200 grams of rice to my evening meal once my weight stops moving. But I'm not physically tracking that because I already have a background. So if you're eating the same thing every day and you're tracking your weight trends, that's a way you can get around tracking calories. But besides that, I don't think it's a big issue. If it really feels restrictive to you, that's fine. But I would really recommend investing in yourself and just spending the little bit of time that it takes to track your nutrition, track your intake. It's going to go a long ways in helping you make progress. I have written in my notes here, not tracking is how you lose 6 months of progress. I did it. So that's up to you. I know some people just are in the gym for enjoyment, so that's fine. But I would really recommend going that extra mile and getting the most out of your training. Now, here's another gripe. I feel fat. So if you've been skinny for a while and you've had abs since you were like 12, yeah, old, 190 pounds, shredded, natty. And so you see that and you're like, I gotta look like that. The best way to look like that is just not to get fat. That's not the case, man. If you want to put on that kind of size that guy has, number one, it's going to take a lot longer than what they're showing online. That's just the case. Just look around. The next time you go to the gym, look around. No one in there is that guy. There's a reason that social media brings the freaks to the top, because that's exactly what they are. They're outliers, they're freaks, they stand out for a reason. They're not the norm. So more than likely you're not that person. So you're gonna have to do a little more thinking than they did to get to where they are. And paradoxically, the point where you feel fat, if you're a skinny guy, is probably the point where you're just starting to make progress. You're just getting into the body fat range and the energy availability to really start cranking up your training and put on size. So stick with it. Don't get discouraged by seeing, oh, I got like a few blurry lower abs right now in the mirror, and my last deep fried gym picture didn't look so crisp. Like, hey, this is what you signed up for. We're going to be mature about this, and we're going to take the steps necessary to reach the endpoint that we want. We're not going to reach for the instant gratification that is staying comfortable and staying shredded, even though you're like 120 pounds, which is my case. I almost stayed that way until I found some good resources online. Now I'm just going to disseminate the information that I found that helped me and help y'all out. So if you're actually fat, let's say, okay, I'm feeling fat, I'm feeling like I'm too heavy, you will know. I promise you, you will know. Your friends and your family will probably start saying something if you're close with them. When you actually look at yourself in the mirror, it's going to be clear. Your clothes are going to fit noticeably different if you've really taken it too far. And like I said, I think this is why it's good to use a waist measurement as a proxy to see how well you're doing on your bulk. Again, that waist measurement is 40 inches for men, 35 inches for women. If the 2% of women that watch this video get that. And the final question I have here is, when do I stop? Whenever you want. Thanks for watching. I'm just kidding. We can go a little deeper than that. Look, if I'm being honest, if you don't really plan on competing and you don't have any goals of having like some photo shoot, or you have a vacation that you really want to get lean for, like a dedicated and intentional cut is probably not something most naturals need to concern themselves with, at least for the vast majority of the initial part of their lifting career. I think if you bulk up to a pretty heavy body weight, and let's say you are looking a little fluffy, at that point, I would go into maintenance mode and get some of that recomp effect. And just kind of gradually, you may slip into a deficit for some days, and over time, you'll lose body fat as you continue to do that, and you'll find your kind of equilibrium until you get to that point to where you're like, okay, I'm actually lean enough to where I can go ahead and bulk again. And then you start on a bulk, probably slower than you did it before. Look, focusing on the end right now is going to be the thing that holds you back. So I wouldn't concern yourself with ending it too early. But if you do decide to cut it short, just make sure it's for the right reasons. Make sure it's not because you're comparing yourself to people online and you have another person's goals being projected onto you. And so therefore you want to feel like them, you want to be like them. And so you cut your own personal journey short because of something you saw. That's my one kind of caution. If you're going to stop your bulk. And of course, if you're having like actual health issues, like you've got super high blood pressure, anything like that would require medical management, then absolutely. I'm not a medical doctor, by the way, so cover my ass there. Okay, we made it through that. Just a few takeaways, a few final points here that I want to make at the end. All of this is useless without training. That went unsaid at the start of the video, but I did mention that the common American is super good at putting on weight, but they're not very good at putting on muscle. So the thing we have to focus on here is providing a really strong muscle growth stimulus, so the majority of the energy that we're consuming, that we're actually over consuming, goes to putting on lean tissue, muscle mass, and not putting on fat mass. So good, consistent, hard training is what matters here. And this video is not going to go over what that looks like. I have a few videos earlier on my channel of some workout vlogs and some videos about my training principles. So you can go check those out. I will have later videos dedicated to training and what makes a really good hypertrophy training program in the future. So stay tuned for that and subscribe if you want to see more content like that later. And then the other factor that no one talks about because it's not very sexy is sleep. So we've got the energy availability covered, we've got the training, but all of that will not build muscle if you don't recover from that training. And the recovery process is when you actually use that energy to build the muscle mass that you stimulated from your training. So if you're not having adequate sleep, if you're staying up till 4 a.m. scrolling on TikTok and watching Twitch, like, I don't know what to tell you. Get your priorities straight, dude. If you're not making progress in the gym and you're getting 4 hours of sleep a night, that's on you, man. It's not your genetics. You haven't been doomed. You haven't been misled. It's not your program. Just get some sleep, man. Get a regular sleep schedule. It doesn't have to be absurd. It doesn't have to be like these hyper optimized wake up at 5 a.m. routines, hop in a cold plunge, which is probably not good for muscle growth. I'll throw up a study. Fun fact, if you're on the cold plunge grind, dude, you're leaving gains on the table. Get your sleep, eat your food, train hard. Happy bulking, my friends. Enjoy your gains.